Alright, so do we want to start with the facilitation team itself, or would we like to work out an order that we think the agenda should be for locking down the facilitate? Okay, real quick, who in here wants to facilitate? Raise your hand.
Can the question be phrased to is willing to facilitate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it learning to facilitate?
I think you should
Specifically
want
for
to,
the 8th.
Like,
So, okay, can we just have everybody who has facilitation training? So, 1, 2,
Wait, for the 8th.
for the 8th.
Oh,
Okay, so 1, 2, let me just, alright.
that's willing that one.
Bentley, Claire, Isaac, Chris.
Oh, I asked, actually, I
Jeremy.
hope no one minds, I asked Liz Canfield to come by tonight,
That's
because she
awesome.
does facilitation training.
Absolutely.
Jeremy, Josh.
She's great at it.
Yes, Graham, and he's gonna need a seat.
I think you guys can put another person on that couch.
Well, hello.
I got it. Alright, I think I have, so I have, okay, tell me if I didn't call your name.
Claire.
Sir, Bentley, Claire, Isaac, Chris,
That's
Jeremy, Josh, and Graham.
that's the name.
Did Graham
Greg
raise
hat.
his Greg hat?
Yeah, I already told him.
Oh, okay.
So, alright.
I was like,
So, I am going to ask that you people get together at some point and hash out exactly who's going to do what for that meeting and have backups in case for some crazy reason the GA is like, when you're like, hey, we are the facilitators for this event, and you know, is that okay with everybody if somebody says no? Yes.
Can we amongst ourselves real quick figure out who is willing to facilitate that GA? Because I believe a lot of the hands I saw up are going to have proposals for that GA.
I want to moderate them people.
Alright, so Graham's willing to moderate.
I'm not going to. I said I want to.
I said will.
Yeah.
So Graham's willing to moderate. Does anyone mind going through this process right now?
Nope.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
well, I
hop
was
in.
gonna say one thing. Even if you have proposals, you don't have to be the person to make the proposal.
That's
So,
very true.
even if you become a facilitator, then you can convey whatever message you want through someone who supports you.
Or
I
we can
think.
have a backup.
And also, I mean, like, for instance, like for me, like, I'm willing to facilitate this meeting. I do have proposals, but those proposals will be online before I get there, and someone else can take over that idea.
Sure. Graham is saying he's willing to moderate Isaac.
I like that, Graham, because I've seen you moderate really well before.
Yeah.
And
I don't
think that's
want to facilitate at all.
that's cool.
Alright.
Isaac, are you willing to
Chris, what are you going to
facilitate?
do?
I'm willing to take stack.
Stack? Okay.
Isaac?
We're probably going to need 2 stack takers
Yeah.
for that night.
I'll take another step.
Maybe we'll take stack?
Yeah.
I'm willing to
Listen.
scribe.
You want
No,
to?
no, I'm thinking.
I can do temp too.
So,
I mean, I don't really care. I'll do temp. I'll
At
do
this point,
step.
at this point we have 3 males and 1 female.
No.
It would be
I have
pretty
2 females, I have
fantastic.
Claire and
Can't
Bentley.
do it.
Yeah,
Oh,
I was thinking-
Claire, you're willing as well?
Here's the thing.
You have proposals that night, right?
I don't.
Okay.
I technically could have a proposal that night, but it could wait.
Is it the fewer GAs proposal?
Do you want to be on 10?
No, that's not mine. I don't have one written for that. I assume that there's a lot of that talk going on, so I'm assuming someone else is coming up with one.
I do have one.
Okay, then there you go. That's
We
fine.
can talk about
Yeah.
it.
I'm
Give someone
willing.
else.
I'm willing to.
What
Um,
was your
that
issue?
night.
So
I
do you have a preference?
hate
What do you
I
hate?
hate not moderating if I'm up there. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable, and here's why. Just to let you guys know, it's a really uncomfortable position to be like in the middle for me, where I can't either be participating in the crowd
yeah.
and then also not speaking and just not moderating. It's a really uncomfortable position. I don't do well in it at all. So when I say I'm willing, like I'm always willing to help if you need me to, but I prefer to be in audience participation.
I'll just put you down as willing.
Willing, absolutely willing.
Okay.
I mean, I'll go in if I need to. by any
Well,
means,
that
but-
could be like, you know, if y'all want to switch out or something.
Yeah, that's fine too. I mean, and Graham's a great moderator, so I think it should be him. I just like, you also might need more women up there, so
Yeah.
it just
Well-
depends on what the team looks like, you know? Like, if it's just a bunch of white dudes, then.
Okay, well in that case,
Do
well, we
we-
have Chris and Sir.
And Bentley.
And, oh, that, yeah. Yeah, I already,
Can we put in some first year?
yeah, sure. Sure.
Isn't that temp?
That's temp though.
Yeah.
Wanna do that?
Do we want to combine first
Are they
year and
Temp
temp?
first year?
I thought
That's
that
it's traditionally been, first year is a function of temp.
I didn't know that.
It's not how we were running it.
Yeah.
At least
Yeah.
when I was moderating, that's not how it was run. It
Yeah.
makes sense to me. I think that's how it should be.
That's
but-
how I've done it as temp.
No, it
So
makes
I've
total
seen it.
sense. I think that's how it
Can
should be.
When
Can
I
I ask a question about first year? I'll go right ahead and then I'll.
I was just saying that when I ran that once, I just used the stack pictures as first year, and I thought
Well,
that
the
was
stack is really hard to be first year because you
Yeah,
have to
you
look
can't-
at
yeah, you need
every
a-
single
you need a
person.
different
Temp check makes
Temp,
sense.
yeah, temp should be first year because they also have a really important job to make sure that they, you know,
I see.
Yeah.
I was just saying.
yeah, good
Do you,
point.
are you finished?
Yeah.
Okay. I Temp did it in DC, and that's how I watched them do first year in DC. I will say that night that we experienced, the 2 times that I've seen us experiment with first year was highly confusing to someone that's ADHD like me because people were running all around, and it was freaking me out really bad because I was like watching them instead of watching what was happening in front of me. And if you haven't noticed, there's a lot of attention problems within Orva. So people were like looking all around them, watching what was going on. So we're always kind of on alert. So I'm wondering if we can't make first year just one person walking around. I know it's sort of difficult because you kind of need
Well, that
two
makes sense that
sides.
it's a temp check, right? Because the temp check is the only person who should be walking around anyway.
Also, this is
And
going to
temp
be,
doesn't
it's going to
have
be
much
at,
to do.
I think it's going to be at the Friends Meeting House, which has 3 specific sections.
That's what I mean. That's why there
one
ended up being
person-
3 first years. that
3
night.
first years?
That's what happened, and that's why it got so confusing.
Yeah,
Okay.
there were so many hands going up.
I know.
Like 15 at a time.
It's gonna happen
And-
again.
Okay, so to be
But
prepared for
Some
that.
of those people were putting their hands up to get into stack, and stack wasn't open.
Yeah.
People
Well,
should be reminded of like
Hand signal.
open and closed stack.
Amen.
to be
Okay.
prepared for that, I mean, can't you say the facilitation
clear
team
about
could take it upon itself that if there are too many hands going up, then stack can take temp. Stack can
But that's
address.
that's what like went wrong is like 2 people running around the room trying
Right,
to get
so
to all these
if-
hands.
So if there's a facilitation team with 2 stacks, 1 temp, or 2 temps, 2 stacks, then that's 4 people. That when those hands go up, then they recognize, okay, we need to,
But the point
Do this.
that I was making is that when all this, and which is what Isaac was saying again, once all those hands go up and then 4 people start running around, I was like, I can't do this. My eyes want to go in 4 different places.
isn't
right
that moderator's position to say, okay, let's address the situation right now and go. Let's
We're
take
gonna
let's
open
take a
stack,
large
we're gonna
stack or
close
whatever
stack.
it is.
I've got Jeremy's hand. Are you finished, man?
Sorry.
I think that one of the problems that has encouraged people not to discipline themselves in stack, because that's what we need. The stack is like sort of a overarching concept that people need to wait their turn. And one of the things that might help that is to go back to the maximum 5 stack,
Yeah, absolutely.
and then, make it an explicit act of the body to extend stack beyond that. But that would help people like sort of regulate themselves and not feel like, oh well, now I'm going to talk again. Oh, now I'm going to talk again. And like, yeah.
Also, what would you like to do as far as facilitation is? What are you most comfortable doing?
For the 8th,
Yeah.
I'm open to do anything.
Okay. And Greg and Sir, I'd like to you as well. What would you like to do?
Do we have a time?
No.
I can do that.
Okay. And Sir?
Probably more than likely temp check.
Temp check.
Yeah, probably more than likely.
Can I ask something? Is there any kind of training for people to facilitate in the future?
We're going to be putting this together.
Yeah,
Yeah, I hope that we're here to establish
I think, yeah.
not just facilitation team for Sunday, but a facilitation work group that is interested in figuring out the training process for new folks and bringing lots of people in to keep the facilitation team fresh.
So this is what it looks like right now, just to let everybody know.
Josh and Isaac have their hands up.
Okay. Josh?
Sure. I was mostly trying to play off the first year topic because it sounds like we have sort of a discrepancy as to what people believe first year is supposed to function as. Ideally, first year is really only previewing points of process and then informal proposals. That's essentially what they're there to vet. So when hands are going up, it's not the first year's job to run over them and be like, let me screen everything everyone has to say. That's not the point, right? They see a point of process, that's what they're supposed to screen. And then when someone comes up to offer an informal proposal, that's what they're supposed to screen. Now I think it might be valuable for us to put in some sort of a different process for informal proposals other than vetting it through the first year. But as we were using it before, that was the intent. And again, with Stack, I think one of the things that we have failed to do, those of us who have facilitated before, cohesively anyway, is to make very, very clear when Stack is opening and when Stack is closing. If we can make very, very clear that we're taking 5 people in Stack, Stack is now open, there are only 4 hands up, we're about to close Stack, that means that only the 4 hands that are up are going to be in Stack. Okay, Stack is closed. Because then when someone comes up while they're in Stack to make a point, you see 15 hands go up. Mm-hmm. And Stack isn't a place to have other people insert their opinions, it's where people can ask a point of clarification, and then if we would like to do it this way, perhaps add a point of information. But I think we've all noticed points of information being abused as point of opinion. So
That's moderator's job to say, I'm sorry, that was
exactly, that is moderator's.
too.
Well, it could be moderator's job. I think we're all here to figure out exactly what we want each of these functions to perform as.
It's each other's job to check each other.
I think so as well. Yeah, so.
A question on first year. I mean, if it's important enough to have this person do it and not I don't know, should we add an extra facilitator for first year, or is that too much? Because I'm thinking about like the moment where you had like all those hands go up and you've got this one person who's also temp or stack or whatever they are, and they can't focus on everyone else. Should we add a first year?
So
that's my question.
I think here's the question we need to ask ourselves as a body then, right? Number one, do we have enough people to where we can kind of try to rotate facilitators every meeting and still have a cohesive and well-trained facilitation team while adding an additional position to that? The next to the facilitation team, and then add another person? Or the next question might be, does temp check have enough to do during the meeting to where they can't maintain themselves as vetting every informal proposal and every point of process? I'm of the opinion that if we can take whatever process we decide would be most efficient and actually get it into a pamphlet form and then get that pamphlet out to everyone so they have a reference, I think that we'll see less confusion when people try to engage with that process, because that's not something we've done yet. So I personally think that temp check in first year could be the same, but that's just my personal opinion, because having facilitated multiple meetings, temp check is usually just kind of chilling back. Now perhaps time check could also duel as a first year if that becomes necessary for like reinforcement, right? But I don't think that we need to add an additional body to the front simply because, and I'm not opposed to it either.
I think it's good.
No, that's a good idea.
But I think that at least for right now, we need to focus on who we have, maintain who we have who's interested as incredibly competent, and then perhaps move forward by adding positions, because we don't even have the 5 positions that we have like down.
We sort of do.
I'm saying that they're assigned. I'm saying as a collective. I bet you if we were
what-
each asked to give a definition of what the moderator does, I bet you if we were each asked to give a definition of what Stack does, we would all have different definitions. That's what I think.
Is a brochure about, here's how GA works, here's our process and all that stuff, is that happening Sunday?
I-
No.
Because here's why. And I've been working on a packet about, and it doesn't have to be used by any means, but parts of it can be used probably by Sunday if we could get this typed up, but it's what consensus is, because people don't understand what consensus is, and it's not always, you know, it's not always about agreement. So I have an entire thing, you know, it's basically just cut and pasted off the consensus Wikipedia, which is actually quite helpful, and a bunch of other things. So it's pretty simplistic, and I think that would be really lovely to get a brochure about consensus as well passed out. I don't really see any reason why we can't do this by Sunday, though.
I am down to take 4 or 5 hours between now and Sunday and sit down with anyone who wants to and
I'll do
get
it too.
something typed up.
My only issue with that is that this is something that we're experimenting with. This isn't
Right.
concrete yet.
Right, but all anyone ever wants is to see it.
A
I mean,
reference.
I've
They just need a
literally
reference.
heard it from before
I mean-
we were at Canal. We're like, can I see something that says what we're doing? Because it's helpful.
Isaac, then
Go, please.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take stat.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
go ahead.
that we're here tonight also to establish a facilitation work group that's committed to creating things like that. And that if, yes, the process is evolving and the structure of GA is evolving, but we can print it out specifically for that night. It's like, this is what's happening tonight. And then we can figure out what works and we can keep printing it out. And maybe eventually we'll get to something we're pretty set on and happy with.
Yeah, I agree.
But I like to, we are getting into that territory. We were talking about facilitation, and right now we're just started talking about like process and the GA structure. And if you look, I don't know, I just wanted to say that since, well, I guess Ron asked us to think about who wants to facilitate on Sunday. I want to ask people to think about who wants to be in the facilitation work group, not necessarily facilitate on Sunday, but get the training and facilitate in the future, you know? And I was looking at the notes, I just want to say, if we can have an organized discussion maybe tonight, I thought like we could speak specifically about facilitation team issues, the GA schedule, but maybe that's separate, maybe that's a proposal or something, and GA structure, and then process, or maybe we just want to keep it going the way it's going, because it's fine.
I mean, it's not bad. I think
But like,
you had your hand up first. Yeah.
I'm just want to say if we can't do pamphlets, and I feel like I don't know how much pamphlets would cost for a whole bunch of people, but okay. But if we can't do that, then a couple whiteboards should do, and they can just be up in front of everyone. You can just point. Come on now, come on, guys.
yeah, like I guess my point was that maybe laying out some of these things for pamphlets is everyone here interested in hashing out those details, because it's going to be complex. It's going to be a lot of work. We're going to need a couple hours. I don't know how long. Yeah, I'm not trying to scare you, but we could begin doing that definitely. Like I was thinking about structure, and I looked at Josh's GA procedure notes, because I don't know any other document that exists like this, but we're looking to create it. I tried to define the process for informal and formal proposals as I understand them, and suggest like in paragraph format, so we can lay it in that pamphlet. But yeah, I mean,
Well,
I've got Bentley and Jeremy with their hands up.
let's see. So
And then Claire,
keep going.
Josh.
okay, cool.
Dylan, can I get a paper behind you?
No, it's okay.
This one? Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, we've been talking about creating a pamphlet or a booklet for 2 months. So it is very necessary. But what we haven't defined is what our process is. So that's the problem. And that's maybe something we can do as a facilitation group to define the process for this GA and have that pamphlet be for just this GA and just have it like a trial and error. You know, it's nothing concrete. And also, you know, we've talked about having GAs for just soapbox. I mean, there's many ways of going about GA and having these gatherings. And I think that as long as a team wants to get together, and if it's a solid team of people, you know, of course it's gonna be like a dedicated group of people who are going to be in communication every single day pretty much, because that's a lot of work. I mean, think about all the issues that come up pretty much every day. That's a lot of work. So if there is going to be one team dedicated to this, I think that's great. But I also think that it shouldn't exclude people who just want to help and be involved. Like, for instance, if I want to work in my work groups and if I also want to educate myself on facilitation, I'd like to be able to step in every now and then. So I don't think it should be exclusive. I think that we should have at least some sort of smaller team, but a larger like group that's available. I do think that rotation is important because you don't want the same faces up all the time. And there was one more point. I didn't write it down, so I forgot, so go ahead.
Jeremy.
We have this problem with the Richmond IWW about how to document process. We adopted Rusty's Rules of Order, and there's a pamphlet that exists already. I'm not saying that we should use that pamphlet, but we certainly have a template in that.
What's it called?
It's called Rusty's Rules of Order, and it's
Rusty's?
Rusty's.
Is that canal and I learned how to
Yeah.
facilitation in that.
And we printed out pamphlets for everybody, and that helped a lot. It helped. I don't think people actually read them necessarily, but it certainly got rid of that complaint. It does make it more legitimate. That's all.
Am I next?
Yes.
Okay, because I opened this can
And
of
then
worms. Okay, that's fine. I opened this can of worms. I just want to let everyone know I was going to do this without the facilitations team's grace or approval or not. So we can talk about it, but it doesn't really matter because I was going to do it anyways. And what it was going to include, just to let you guys know that it's probably going to exist, was the process document that we already have in place on how GA runs, because this will quite. No. Is this, wait, maybe it is. No. Another one. It's very similar.
Yeah, this is the facilitation.
That was the very
This is the first one.
draft that was done at the very beginning.
Yeah, we have another one. We have it's a little bit more, so I was gonna use that, and I was gonna use what is consensus, about a page on what consensus means, on what it is, what it does, different ways you can do it, and then I was also going to include Rusty's Rules of Order. So, thank you, Jeremy. Those are the three things that it was going to exist, that were going to be part of this packet, and are still going to be part of this packet. So if anybody wants to talk to me about what they want to see in it, that's fine. It's going to exist anyway, so.
Could you just put a date for it so that if we do change it, we can say, okay, this is the old one, this is the new one?
Sure, that's fine. I was going to make them for Sunday, and just have them be available.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm also making some General Assembly packets for those that don't know how to deal with Virginia General Assembly, not our General Assembly, as well for Sunday. Handouts are my favorite thing in the world. So I'm just doing that, and it doesn't really, I mean, I understand we can't all remember exactly how it works. I learn really well if I see something in front of me and I can read it. So that's how I've learned how to facilitate. It's not from facilitation training, it's from reading New York minutes. That's how I learned how, you know? So, because there hasn't really been any facilitation training. So we can go back to the regular agenda, because I just want to let you know I opened that can of worms, and it's going to exist regardless. So, like, if you want to go back to the agenda, that's perfectly fine, or we can talk about it.
Just so I'm clear, are hand signals part of what you're including?
Yes.
Okay. And then after we have GA with her pamphlets, then it'll be decided on whether those were yay, nay, what needs to be changed for next GA after that. Cool.
Will it have the schedule of the GA in it?
Here's what I'm thinking. I can separate the three, so it's Rusty's Rules of Order, separate, consensus, separate, and then the one-page General Assembly document, separate, so that can be easily changed anytime. I'll print like 50 of those instead of a lot, you know, instead of a ton, and then that can easily be changed. And we can just make an announcement saying, this could easily be changed, please know that, we'll put it on the thing, done.
Oh, back. Just goes to the kitchen. Josh.
Okay, so maybe, because I think, based on what Isaac had gone over with the agenda, we wanted to talk structure, we wanted to talk about process, we wanted to talk about the subtleties of GA. Would it make sense that we just kind of sit around and put together the pamphlet as a group right now? Because the pamphlet would include the process and the structure and all those things we're about to talk about.
I can just take notes on what we talk
and
about, and then
just sort of take the page document that we had written out about the process and maybe go step by step and say, well, this is what the process currently is for submitting informal proposals. What do we think about it? What's good? What's bad? How can we change it? And then just go through each step of the process, which would include structure and process, and figure out what's good, what's bad, refine it as we go, and then take those revisions and put them into the pamphlet. I mean, we can do multiple things at once here. And maybe that would, supplement Isaac's well put together and well thought out schedule or agenda for the night.
Well, I'll address what you just said and then what Claire said. I don't see it being a bad idea, but I think with the time that we have now, maybe we should focus on what we want GA to look like on Sunday. Also, with the pamphlets just coming out on Sunday, not a lot of people, and I'm just not trying to judge, but I don't think it's gonna be got, right then and there. So maybe it's great to have the pamphlets, but we shouldn't structure GA around that consensus model for that day, maybe. Or if we do, then we need to present it in a really, really,
Big way.
yeah, I don't know. In order for it to work well, I think we should, if we were to work with that model that day, then we would have to present it in a really strong, here's how this is gonna go. Instead of, here's this piece of paper, look over it whenever you have time, and then leave, and then get it, and then come back. Oh God, I forgot what I was gonna say. What did you say? I don't know. I personally, just for me, I would rather spend my time on the agenda, and the pamphlets can be worked out through communication after this meeting.
I agree with that.
Totally fine. Yeah.
It is a great idea. I
I'll
think
just
it's
take notes
amazing.
from what
I mean,
everyone says and-
I'm glad that's gonna happen. I won't be a part of it, but I'm so glad it's gonna happen.
No,
But
that's fine. We'll me and Josh and whoever else wants to work on it, it's fine.
so I was just gonna say, I mean,
Yeah.
what do we have? 2 hours?
No,
Or
wait for
an
an
hour?
hour.
Okay, so an hour. An hour is left, and I maybe would say that I would like to know what GA's sort of kind of gonna look like on Sunday, and the facilitation team that's gonna be there can kind of get together afterwards to do a little more threshing before then.
I took these basic notes, pretty much combining everything that was talked about last time to what I think would be a decent schedule, and we can work that out. One, introduction, welcome, basically tell everybody what we're here, kind of what we've been up to. There's going to be a lot of new faces, I imagine, catch people up on that. Following that, work group announcements, which is they kind of go together. After that, almost everybody said they wanted more soapbox. So assign a specific soapbox at the beginning, probably half-hour time limit on that, and then
Time limit for each person?
3-minute time limit for each person.
So 10.
Informal proposals after that, formal proposals, and then I think a break might be in order, and then follow that with points of inspiration, and then get to the agenda points, and then closing.
I have a question. If we're gonna do formal proposals, wouldn't that mean that there's already been an informal proposal at hand, and has that happened? Or would we need that for this GA? And I have to use that someplace.
Okay.
But I'm listening,
So
so.
there is a formal proposal.
Lots, right?
There's lots, but most importantly, I say with, I only say because it's been on the table for 3 weeks now, is to come up with a strategy. My understanding was that this entire the entire GA would basically be focused on building strategy. And I think, I think some soapbox and I think some other things are useful, but if I'm wrong about that, then I'm happy to be corrected. But my understanding is that we would be dedicated, like, I've come up with an agenda for how to go about strategizing, and it's 3.5 hours long. So, and I was going to present it to you guys for your input on that. But my guess is that if we're going to try and do this, it's going to take a long time.
Try to do what?
Actually come up with a strategy through a consensus model.
Chris, Josh.
Right.
And to be clear, I think there's something that can make that work, and we'll try and not do everything, everybody talking to each other all the time. But again, if we're going to try and do this through a consensus model, it could take a long time.
I was just gonna say, I think having a soapbox, a decent enough soapbox, is gonna be important and actually encouraged, because we've been out of GA for about 2 weeks or so. So a good catch-up period, just kind of see where everybody is, I think should actually be encouraged. And I will also assume that I think this will be a long GA. I'm hoping not 5 or 6 hours long, but I think everyone's kind of on the same page that this is probably going to be 3 hours or so, at least. That's what I'm kind of guessing at, just because we do have a lot of catching up to do, and we're taking on a big project in this GA, at least starting a big project. So that's.
So yeah, Graham, I was kind of on the same page as you. We want to have a GA all about strategy, but I know I've said this before, but I don't know how we can have a strategy if we don't have goals, because the strategy is your map or your path to get to the goals, and without any unified and agreed upon idea as to what brings us all together, then we don't have any goals, and without any goals, I don't think that we can have a really effective strategy. So, along that line, so how can we strategize, right, while creating these goals at the same time? I think, if we sort of utilize, and I haven't heard your agenda yet, so I can't totally speak to it, but, while continuing to get proposals on the table as to how we can, develop our short-term agenda, like with the Virginia GA, that's something we need to focus on. It just is. Most people seem to agree on that. And a couple other things, Martin Luther King Day, the VPA, all these things that are coming up very, very soon, those would probably have some proposals on the table about them. But then the sooner we can get our unified message together, what are our unified goals, what are our unified grievances, what are our unified demands, then we can more quickly approach the strategy. Because if we're making strategy on something that we don't all agree upon, we're going to be wandering through a forest with a map but no endpoint.
Yeah, I think you're next, Jeremy.
Okay.
No, I wasn't, and then you, and then you, sorry. I have a little bit of trouble with reworking the entire GA because we already have an existing document that people haven't been able to get their hands on that actually works. And if people knew what it was, then it could work, which again is why I wanted to do the brochure. Because people just don't even know that it exists and that they can see it. Mm-hmm. And if people knew exactly what the process was, then the process would already work. There might be some kinks here and there that we can work out, but I don't think we need to rework an entire GA format for Sunday at all. That's just a personal opinion, but I think we already have one in place. I agree we don't have goals. I'm actually a little bit uncomfortable with specific goals because I really like the fluidity of this movement, but I do think that we have come up with several focus points. So I'm not sure, maybe we can change the word goals to focus points and strategize on those focus points, like Virginia General Assembly and other things like that. But we also have a meeting, Will is calling, me and Will are both point people for Virginia General Assembly, and we're calling for a meeting on Monday about strategizing for Virginia General Assembly. So that might help kind of cut out some of the time on Sunday because then if people are really interested in Virginia General Assembly, they can come to this and possibly, because we've been doing a lot of work this week and no one's really wanted to do anything this week with us except for me and Will about Virginia General Assembly, because it's a lot of work. It's going to be a lot. Tammy goes third.
I go second.
Okay, I, for one, really agree with Chris. Like, really agree that I think we should put, at least for this, GA, maybe not making a thing for every time, but a lot of people have a lot of things that they've done over the time. They have ideas that have been bubbling, they have feelings that have been bubbling. I think if we put in the soapbox at the beginning, it will both ease tension, and we can do a temp check among everyone. I don't know that I'm comfortable with changing GA process, even for that necessarily, but I feel that we have a process in mind already. In Kanawha, I remember proposing that we have a process for emergency changes, and I think we should try to initiate that and just say at the very start, hey, just an emergency proposal that we have a soapbox at the very beginning before we go into the next parts. For this GA specifically.
I think that's totally fitting in with how GA has evolved. Although the facilitation, did I just cut
Yep.
somebody off?
Yeah, you got 3 people.
Sorry.
1, 2, 3, and then you're 4.
I'm
I'm doing it by number,
I didn't see
okay?
any hands. All right, yeah.
Jeremy 1, Graham 2, Silver 3, Isaac 4.
Good. I'm glad Graham's not going after me. If we're gonna have a 3.5 hour GA, I don't, in principle, have a problem with that. But it means that facilitation needs to stick to that agenda. The problem is not long GAs, and you guys know I've had problems with long GAs. It's not the length of time per se. It's the way in which disorganization disrespects everybody's time. And that people go out of process and end up wasting people's time. Nobody has a problem doing productive work. It's when they sit there and people are just shooting the shit and not making progress. So 3.5 hour GA, if it ends up with us having at least progress towards a strategy, great. I'm all about it. But let's make sure that facilitation utilizes all of that time and make sure that we stick to that agenda so that it just doesn't become a clusterfuck.
Circle jerk clusterfuck. Was
Gary's here, but not
Also what I'm
Be clear.
I have a utmost respect for someone.
So, am I up? Safer spaces.